Hello, everybody. Jim Feist and Joe Mac. Joe, I had my first kind of off week. I was 1-2 in the pros, and that was my first losing week in about 9 weeks. And you know, when I looked at the card and why did I give out so few games, I just couldn't get comfortable. I could make cases for both sides of almost every game, and I just couldn't get, I had the bullets in the gun, but I couldn't pull the trigger. So I was kind of happy because if I'd have gone deeper, I'd have lost more. So it was good that I backed off and went slow. How'd you do?
No, it was not a good NFL Week 7 either. We had a rough time with the pros, couple of games. I mean, we were never even in the Sunday night game with the Eagles, just an awful side. And I'll tell you, the game that had me pulling my hair out here was I don't give out a whole lot of totals in the Jim Hurley Network. We give out our share of totals, but, not tons of them. And I really liked going in the over in the Cardinals-Giants game at the Meadowlands. Now, we knew there was a chance of rain, there was going to be some wind. But, I mean, that game had 31 points scored with 8 minutes to go in the second quarter. And somehow it did not get to go over 50 points. And, I watched the whole game, and, there was a missed field goal by the Giant kicker, a 37-yarder that clanked off the right upright. There were a couple other chances where the Cardinals were very conservative and settled for field goals. But when I saw that we lost that game, I said, this is bound to be not a good week, and it was not. But, you can't have them all. I mean, I was just looking over the stats here for the season, Jim, and as we know, it's been a crazy, wild year in terms of home teams being so bad. And I looked at it and I said, you tally it up now going into the Thursday night game between the Redskins and the Vikings here. And home teams, according to my records, are 37, 67, and 2. And I said, boy, it should be just so easy just to take all the road teams. It doesn't always work that way. As the old saying goes, sometimes you zig when you should have zagged. I mean, we've had plenty of road dogs this year. Some have won for us, some haven't. And some, I have to admit, you look back after the dust has settled on a Sunday night or a Monday night, and you say, I should have. We should have had this, should have had that. So it's one of those weeks for both of us, it sounds like, but we're ready to rock and roll for NFL Week 8, and obviously a big college card. We're getting closer to some of these big marquee matchups we're waiting for, like LSU, Alabama in a couple of weeks and whatnot. But it's at least nice to see in the colleges that, we've had so many total blowout, 35-point, 40-point spreads. Same as going on here. Oklahoma's 23.5-point over Kansas State, and you got some of those monster favorites still. But you know what? You're going to get some more competition and closer games, I would think, in the colleges. And I think we're going to zoom in. I really like a few games in college, so I think it's going to be a big week for Jim Hurley Network. Let me just shoot out that phone number. It's toll-free, 1-800-323-4453, or you can get it online, jimhurley.com. Get our picks, like I said, sides and totals, 1-800-323-4453. I got to say, I really like 3, maybe 4 college games really big this week. So we're going to rock and roll to the winner's circle with those games, and we're going to have a bounce back in the NFL.
Well, I'm sure that'll happen. I mean, we've been doing this a long time. We know we're going to have those down weeks every once in a while. And like I said, I was 1-2 in the pros, and going into that week, I was 35-14. So in the pros, I've been pretty happy with my NFL this year, and we're going to come back. We did come back Monday night. We had the under in the New England and Jets game. I was a little worried about it because it kept scoring off of turnovers, and that always gives you a boost for overs, but it didn't happen. 33-0. When I've heard this stat, and I didn't go back and verify it, but in the last 15 years, Belichick and Brady together, they've covered the spread 63% of the time.
I can believe it. Yeah, no, I've looked at stats over recent times, 10 years, and Belichick's been here now, 20 years? It's amazing the spread numbers they've put out there over the years, Jim. It's amazing. Obviously, they lay a lot of points, a lot of time. They lay big road points. I mean, just Monday night game that you cashed with the under. They were 9.5 or 10-point road favorites. They're just an amazing franchise, and I mean to have that consistency on the field, which we've all seen over the years. But like you said, against the spread, I mean they never have a bad year. They never do.
It's unbelievable that system they run. I kind of think when Brady retires, Belichick will retire with him. What you think? You think I might be right with that prediction?
I could see that. I don't know what's going on this week. Brady's had some, I guess you call them cryptic answers to his future, and I guess there's always people that say, well, there's a little bit of bad blood between Belichick and Brady, here and there. But let's face it, you're talking about a relationship. I mean, they've been together. I mean, Brady's been the starting quarterback there since week 3 or week 4 of the 2000 season. I mean, we're in 2019. This is crazy. Belichick's obviously been the head coach the entire time. I mean, this is his 20th year coaching up the Patriots. I think that would make a lot of sense, but you know what? I don't know where either one of them really calls the finish line. Like, you don't get any sense that they're going to retire. I mean, it's funny. Some athletes and some coaches, they kind of threaten from year to year, this is it, this is my last year, and they stick around, Brett Favre being an example in the last 10 years. But I don't know. I mean, maybe they both go out together like you seem to think, and I seem to think. But you know what, Jim? That still might be 3 or 4 years down the line. So I could see it happening, and no one's ever gonna. I mean, you could debate whether Belichick's the greatest ever. That kind of barroom chit chat with Lombardi, whatever. But I'll say this: I don't think the NFL is ever going to have a defensive mind who communicates to his players what needs to be done. I don't think you're ever going to see that in the NFL in our lifetime and beyond. I mean, he is. I mean, when Belichick coached the defense on the Jets for a couple of years, when Parcells was a coach, I used to tell a friend of mine who covered the Jets for a New Jersey paper, I said, you can look all around the league. I used to tell him, Bill Belichick is the most important figure in the NFL. I mean, his defense for the Jet teams in, I think it was 98, 99, was unbelievable. I mean, they didn't have that much talent, and they were shutting teams down, shutting teams out. He's the best defensive mind, I think, bar none, in football history. And you can debate whether it's him or Lombardi or Bill Walsh, whoever is your flavor to as greatest coach ever. But he's the best defensive mind this league probably will ever see. Well,
this year, I mean, they're just shutting people down. They don't give up anything. I think in all the games they've played, they've only given up 48 points on a year. That's incredible.
And I'll tell you this, not to hog up all the airtime here, but that secondary, now with both McCourties there and with Stephon Gilmore there, and consider that they got rid of the kid who was a Super Bowl MVP, right, Malcolm Butler a couple of years ago. That secondary they're by far the best. I mean, to me, they're the best secondary in 30-plus years. I think of the 49ers back in the 80s with Ronnie Lott and Eric Wright, some of those guys, and they were an incredible secondary. Well, this is the best defensive backfield we've seen, I'm thinking, in 30 years. I mean, as somebody said the other day on one of the radio shows, they ran the Jets' pass routes better than the Jets did the other night. I mean, they did, Darnold was throwing half his passes off his back foot and all that stuff. But every time you looked up, those guys had the better pass route than Robbie Anderson or Jamison Crowder. I mean, incredible. Just, and I'll tell you what, it's funny. You only got 2 unbeaten teams straight up now in the league, obviously. Patriots 7-0, 49ers 6-0. The 49ers are a big mystery because, people are still learning about them. And I know their game was in bad weather and whatever. But I tell you what, we saw a Super Bowl last year, right, where it was defense, and really it was, inadequate or whatever you want, mediocre offense in a Super Bowl where the Patriots beat the Rams 13-3. I tell you, Jim, we could be heading, if the 49ers are for real, we could be heading for a Super Bowl like that again with these two defenses, because I think the 49er defense is for real. I'm not sure if the whole team is for real, and I know that bothers 49er fans, but I think this defense is for real. And heck, you could get to the end of these playoffs this year, and you could be looking at a Patriot 49er Super Bowl where 13 points might win it again. So,
both of
those teams and their defenses.
Both of those teams picked up wide receivers in trades this week. Sanu goes from Atlanta to the Patriots, and Emmanuel Sanders goes from Denver to San Francisco. So they're both shoring up the wide receiver position for each team. It'd be funny if it got to the Super Bowl and it was San Francisco against New England, you'd have Garoppolo facing Brady, and a lot of people wanted to keep Garoppolo and have him replace Brady, and that did not happen, of course. That would be ironic.
That would be a great storyline. The Super Bowl always seems to have some kind of storylines, and that would be one of the real great ones, because I'd love to see the media try to get it out of Belichick, whether he really, from what you hear, he did not want to part with Garoppolo, but Brady basically said, hey, I want him out of here. Whether he felt threatened or not, who knows? But you know what? You're right, Jim. I mean, and a good point. Both teams not wasting any time this week, picking up wide receivers, trying to fill in spots of weakness. Let's face it, the Patriot offense, okay, that drive to start the game the other night was incredible. 16 plays. It took about, 9 minutes or so. They converted, I believe it was 4 third-down plays with Brady completions. But they need some help at receiver. Let's face it, Josh Gordon, I mean, I hope his life is back in order and everything. But, I mean, he gets hurt way too often. And they need somebody else there. So good job by them to get Sanu, who I think is a high-quality pass catcher. And good job. I don't know how much is left with Emmanuel Sanders. I mean, he's been a little injury-prone in the last 2 years or so. But he's a solid pass catcher. And they both shored up their teams a little bit. In fact, Patriots basically made their trade like right after their Monday night game. So nobody's asleep at the wheel up at Foxborough, that's for sure.
And they never have been. You talk about sleep at the wheel. Atlanta's been at sleep at the wheel since they blew the 28-3 halftime lead in the Super Bowl. They've been a mess since then. And now Ryan is hurt. And Quinn is on the hot seat. And they're going to host Seattle this week, who really got exposed last week against Baltimore. They have not covered a home game this year. They almost lost to Cincinnati at home. They almost lost to the Rams. Missed kick helped them there. They did lose to New Orleans, and they did lose to Baltimore. Not looking too good in either one of those games. Not too sure what to say about Seattle except it's a mediocre team with an exceptional quarterback.
That's a good way of putting it. I mean, it's funny. The road team has won all 7 bets for Seattle this year, right? They've won their road games and not won their home games, as you pointed out. And, yeah, you're right. I mean, they did not play very inspired football the other day. That it was not even Lamar Jackson's finest hour. I mean, he was decent for Baltimore. Not great. But Seattle, it's starting to look, it's funny. We often say this, when the more you play a season, the more flaws that a team has and the more warts that they have, they're going to show up. And Seattle, they got hurt by losing their tight end, Disley, who was having a great start to the season. Seemed like he was catching a touchdown every week. But you're right. It looks to be a pretty run-of-the-mill type of team except for Russell Wilson. And I hate to put a whammy on him, but let's face it. Look at all the teams that have had to go to second and even third-string quarterbacks this year because of injuries or ineffectiveness. I mean, I hope the guy stays in one piece, but if he doesn't get a little bit better pass blocking, who knows? But Seattle's been a little underwhelming lately. And Atlanta, I'll tell you what, I really thought they were going to be very good this year. I thought they had kind of put their demons from that Super Bowl loss that you mentioned 2 years ago or 3 years ago behind them. They obviously have not. They're a terrible, terrible defensive team. I mean, I know they've had some injuries. They lost a guy secondary with an Achilles injury about 3 weeks ago. But, I mean, Jim, just look at it. Their last 3 games, they've given up 37, 34, and 53 points.
Oh, my God.
And meanwhile, and I'm not a big fantasy person, but I happen to know it because my son has Matt Ryan on his team. Matt Ryan's production has been pretty good. Now, granted, a lot of it has been garbage yards and points after they're down 17 points. But he's done his job pretty well, all in all. But that defense, they can't tackle. They don't force turnovers. They never stop teams on third down. And I thought Dan Quinn was some defensive genius. I'm surprised that he still has his job. Now, they have their bye following this game. If they lose, let's say for argument's sake, if they lose by double digits to Seattle here, I would give it 3-1 odds that he's gone. I don't know who on their staff or who else they might look to replace him. I just think, the season is imploded. Now, I will say this. Atlanta, last year, didn't make the playoffs, finished 7-9, but showed some fight down the stretch. Granted, meaningless games and everything, but they showed something to me. They beat Arizona and Carolina down the stretch, and then in the last week of the season came back and beat Tampa Bay. So they were dead and buried and came back. They may have a similar type year if Ryan is healthy and they get straightened out. They may rally a little, but this is such a lost year for the team and that franchise. And I don't mean to pin it all on the head coach, but I really don't know how he's still standing with what we've seen through the first 7 weeks here.
Well, it does. It starts with the head coach. I mean, the head coach hires, the assistant coaches, and he directs the ship. I mean, I see the problem in Dallas. I mean, Garrett is still interfering with the offensive play calling, and they were using a run pass option the first 3 weeks at the rate of 29%. Then he got involved somehow, and some reason I don't know why, and they stopped doing it, and they're down to the run pass option of 11%. And it's his influence. It goes back to what his, and that's kind of a mess too. Even though they looked really good against a banged up Philadelphia team the other day. As long as they have that interference from that head coach and that owner, they're not going anywhere. They're gonna stub their toe again.
You're probably right. I mean, let's face it. They started out 3-0, and I know a lot of people say, "Well, look at the competition. They beat the Giants, Washington, Miami." But the fact of the matter is, this division has kind of come back now. And the Eagles aren't any good. Redskins and Giants lose every week. But you know what? The Cowboys, by all rights, should have blown this division to bits, kind of like what Baltimore has really done in the AFC North. I mean, the Cowboys should be sitting here right now with, a major lead here and just obviously be playing for seeding and whatnot. But you're right. I mean, Jason Garrett, he's in his 9th year. He seems to have had 9 lives. You hear that he has a great relationship with Jerry Jones, and Jerry Jones is comfortable with him. And but you've got a lot of offensive talent. Now, I will say I don't think that offensive line has ever come back to the heights that they had about 3 years ago. When they had like 3 Pro Bowl players on that line. They had Frederick, the center, out last year with some health issues. They've got the left tackle right now. He's hurting. He didn't look himself the other night. So their offensive line is not grade A anymore. But still, you've got all that talent. Forget that Cooper's had some leg or hamstring woes lately. You've got all that talent on offense. And, they should be doing more. Now, the other night, it's hard to criticize them coming off the other night. But, I mean, I'm looking here. They didn't win 3 in a row before that. They didn't cover any of those 3 games. And Garrett hasn't distinguished himself. But, I go back to something I said to you during the summertime. When you talk about NFL coaches, I really, and not that I could ever be a coach in this league or anything, but there's only about 5 or 6 guys, if that are real difference makers, Jim. And you know that. I mean, and Garrett's not one of them. And we talked about Dan Quinn. He's not one of them. You could, it's all subjective. You could wonder about Kyle Shanahan with San Francisco. Is he going to be one of these guys? But, I mean, listen, we know what we got in Belichick. A couple other guys out there. You could say, hey, these guys are high quality. But you know what? There's a lot of guys that don't really impact their team positively. Jason Garrett is probably one of those guys. And listen, with the way that division looks this year, if the Cowboys don't win 10 games and win that division, then shame on them. So if it comes down to that, where the Eagles make a little comeback, and I think the Eagles have it in them that they could rally a bit, although they seem to have some turmoil within the team right now. But I could see the Eagles still with enough talent to give Dallas a little bit of a challenge here. If the Cowboys don't win 10 or 11 this year and win that division going away, then there's something wrong.
Well, the Eagles go up to Buffalo this week. Buffalo is 5-1 on the year. We know Buffalo has a really solid defense, but they don't score very many points. They don't have a very good offensive scheme. They certainly struggle on that end of it, and most of the time they're an underplay. And Philadelphia comes in there with Wentz as a potential hospital visit at any moment because he's subject to getting hurt. Their offensive line really let him down last week. Dallas was all over him. He didn't have much time. I think he's very capable, but you need an offensive line. And they have a lot of injuries on Philadelphia. So, I mean, this is a game that opened 1, Buffalo 1. It's up to 2.5 in most places, which is, that's interesting because when you look back at the preseason, Philadelphia was regarded as one of the challengers in the NFC. That's interesting. Can Philadelphia bounce back with their limited health issues? And Buffalo, of course, has been playing real solid. They even played solid against New England.
The Bills have been a team that from the start I thought were going to have a pretty good year. But I got to admit, you documented the line move and everything. I still think when you look at the NFL this season, forget the summertime and the predictions and whatnot, I think the number looks a little short. I thought the Bills, I'm not great at making numbers, but when I see some numbers that don't look kosher or whatever, sometimes I question it. I don't know. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's in the eye of the beholder. But I thought the Bills might be a little bit more than what they are. And when you consider that the Eagles are playing a third straight road game, right? They lost in Minnesota by 18 2 weeks ago, lost at Dallas by 27 Sunday night. Now they're going for a third straight road game, which not too many NFL teams do much anymore. You wonder what's in the tank for the Eagles. Like you said, they've got injuries. They've got a lot of secondary guys that are banged up. They've got some receivers that are banged up. You know what? Something's telling me this is an SOS game for the Eagles, a save-our-season game. I think they're going to come and show up here. As much as I like the Bills and respect them and really love the way their defense plays, really love the way the coach McDermott maps out defensive game plans, I have a funny feeling that's going to be on one of our list of plays here. I think the Eagles, plus whatever they can get, I got a funny feeling they're going to save their season this week.
Well, they need to. Talking about another team that plays a lot of road games, Oakland. I don't think Oakland's been home since 2016. They're constantly on the road, and they, now they go to Houston, who come off the loss against the Indianapolis Colts. And I don't understand it, but Oakland traded one of their players this week, Conley. And they traded him to Houston. So, and this is the week they're playing Houston. I didn't get that.
Yeah, that seems a little strange. Yeah, you're right. I mean, I'm looking at the Raiders' schedule. They have not been home since week 2. They had a quote home game played overseas against the Bears. They're going to be home November 3rd. So you're going to have gone, what is that? That's 6 straight weeks without a home game. And I think Tampa Bay is in the same kind of situation. And I remember in the spring when they did the schedules, the guy that apparently is the guy that signs off on the schedules was on NFL Network. And he said, I really feel bad that, I don't know if this was a league thing or whatever. He said, I feel bad that we put Tampa Bay on the road or at least away from their home for like 6 or 7 straight weeks. And then they asked him, well, do you feel bad? The Raiders are in the same spot. And he didn't seem like he felt very bad. I said, what is the league still Pete Rozelle versus Al Davis? I mean, there was no sympathy for the Raiders there. And they haven't been home in forever. But, yeah, that was a little strange that they traded that defensive back to the Texans. I mean, he's only going to go in there and tell them everything he knows about the Raiders, but maybe that doesn't bother Gruden. He seems to do the unconventional. And, they've been hanging in for the most part this year. It wasn't pretty last week against Aaron Rodgers. They never seemed to get a grip on him one way or the other. But, yes, some of the trades, and I guess we're going to get some more coming up here. But,
well, we should.
The Raiders, what are you going to do? They're headed to Vegas eventually, and they're kind of a transient team right now, so this is what their life is. I guess they pack their bags and they stay on the road for a long time.
That's right. You're talking about trades. I don't know what Cincinnati's thinking about. They got A.J. Green there, and I think they should throw their season out. They haven't won this year. They're 0-7. They got a bad situation at quarterback. It's way beyond this time for Dalton to be sitting. And they need to do something, and A.J. Green's not being used properly. You can't, it's time to trade him and get some value for him.
Yeah, I would agree. That franchise is a major mess. No one can say fire Marvin Lewis anymore. He's out the door finally after all those years. But yeah, they're a hurting franchise, and like you said, AJ Green. I mean, the guy, one of the most productive wideouts. If you go back the last 7, 8 years in this league, I mean, you have to put them in the top 5 of wide receivers, but just wasting away there. And you would think there'll be a market for him, and you'd think at least the second half of the season, maybe he can play for somebody else and get in the playoffs and show what he's got. But I agree with you, Andy Dalton. I mean, I will give him one award this year, and I'm obviously being sarcastic, but I mean, he has scored or at least thrown for a score on more garbage plays with 2 minutes to go when his team is down, 17 or 20 points. He seems to be the master of that this year. He either runs it in for 2 yards to get a cover or to pad his stats, but it's a bad setup there. No one's showing up at the games, and life's just getting worse for him, right? They got the Rams this week overseas, then they got an open date. I mean, it's spiraling out of control, and like you said, whatever productive players they have in their team, starting with A.J. Green, they should look to ditch and maybe do what Gruden and the Raiders did. Get as many draft picks as possible and shoot for a couple of years down the line, having a decent squad. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see with the Bengals. You figure they're going to get a top 1, 2, or 3 pick this year. With the quarterbacks coming out this year, I mean, everyone's been talking about Miami going after Thur and stuff, but it might be the Bengals that gets the number 1 pick in the end, and maybe he winds up there and could save the team. But I tell you what, when a guy gets hurt like he does in college, and Tua's been hurt a couple of times now in the last 2 years, when guys start getting like that in college, I get a little afraid for their pro careers. So let's face it, the Bengals haven't done too many good drafts in the last few years. I mean, right, this year they drafted an offensive tackle before the mini camp started. The guy was out for the year, so they can't seem to do anything right. Maybe Tua is the apple of their eye for next year, but man, they're headed to 1-15 or 2-14 at best this season.
Well, Joe, thank you. We're running a little long. I got to close it off. Tell me one more time what's going on at Jim Hurley.
All right, we've got a lot of winners. Hey, folks, we got the World Series going on, too, obviously. We've done very well in the playoffs. We had a Game 1 winner. We went over in Astros-Nationals Game 1. Going to have more World Series side and totals winners. Football, wall-to-wall, start with Thursday night action. College, you got SMU, one of the real surprise teams of the year. They're playing on TV. Anyway, you can get it all. Just give us a call. Toll-free, Jim Hurley Network, 1-800-323-4453. That's 1-800-323-4453. Get your winners. Jim Hurley Network. We've been around since 1985, and we're still banging out winners.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it, and have a great week.
You too, Jim. Enjoy. Bye-bye.
Bye. Everybody, thank you for tuning in. Go to the website and check out Jim Hurley. My plays are at that website as well, and they're also at my own website, jimfeist.com. And again, thank you for tuning in.